Hi, boys and girls. It's good to be with you today. It's Pastor Brian. Just wanted to share with you the story today from the Old Testament about a man named Nehemiah. This Sunday in church, we're going to get to learn about a man named Ezra who lived about the same time as Nehemiah, and both were in Jerusalem about the same time. And so I thought it would be good for us to look at Nehemiah's story because it's going to be roughly the same story that we see in Ezra this week. So let me share this with you. You can see on the screen and you can follow along as I read the story entitled Nehemiah Heard News of Jerusalem. It's taken from Nehemiah chapters 1 and 2. Nehemiah was a Jew, one of God's people. God's people had lived in Babylon for many years until King Cyrus, the king of Persia, took over Babylon and let them go home. Some of God's people went home to Judah, but some of them stayed in Babylon. Nehemiah stayed and worked for the king of Persia. One day, some men came from Judah, and Nehemiah asked, "How are God's people doing in Jerusalem?" The men had bad news. The people are in trouble. The walls around Jerusalem are broken down, and the gates have been burned down. Nehemiah sat down and cried. Then he prayed and fasted for several days. "Yahweh, God," he prayed, "we have sinned against you. Please remember your words to Moses. If you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the peoples. But if you return to me and obey me, I will gather you from the ends of the earth and bring you to the place I have chosen." Nehemiah went back and served the king, but he was still sad. The king noticed Nehemiah's mood and asked him, "What's wrong? Why are you sad?" Nehemiah was afraid. No one was supposed to be sad around the king. Nehemiah told the king, "The city where my ancestors are from is in trouble. It is in ruins, and the gates of the city have been burned down." "What do you want to do?" the king asked. Nehemiah prayed. Then he said, "Please send me to Jerusalem so I can rebuild the city." The king agreed. He gave Nehemiah letters to keep him safe as he traveled. If anyone tried to stop him, Nehemiah could show that he had the king's permission to go to Jerusalem. The king also made sure Nehemiah had wood to help rebuild the city gates and walls. He even sent some men from his army to protect Nehemiah. Nehemiah arrived safely in Jerusalem. After 3 days, Nehemiah got up in the middle of the night and went to look at the city's walls. Then he told the people there, "We are in trouble. The city is ruined and the gates have all been burned. Come, let us rebuild Jerusalem's walls." Nehemiah told the people how God had helped him, and he told them everything the king had said and done. The people said, "Let's start rebuilding," and so they did. The workers put in doors, bolts, and bars. They cut stones and lifted them into place on the wall, and they filled in gaps and holes. Soon the wall was half as tall as it had once been. Nehemiah was a wise and good leader of God's people while they worked. He helped them solve any problems they had, and he did not give in to their enemies. The people kept working very hard. In just 52 days, the wall was completed. When all of Jerusalem's enemies heard that the wall had been rebuilt, they were afraid because they knew that God was with his people. Now, boys and girls, you can read this story in the Bible for yourself with your moms and dads, but I want to ask you some questions that maybe you can discuss with your moms and dads. I wonder how you would feel if you were taken away from your home and had to live in a strange land. What would it be like to try to live for God in a place where they didn't believe in your God and they worshiped other gods? You're going to have to answer that question as you live the Christian life, boys and girls. How am I going to live for Jesus in a world that doesn't believe in him? The second thing I want you to talk about with moms and dads is fasting. The text tells us that when Nehemiah was sad, he prayed and fasted for several days. I want you to talk with mom and dad about what fasting is. Do you know? Maybe you can talk with mom and dad and learn what fasting is, and maybe you can try it sometime. And then I want you to remember that Nehemiah prayed scripture as well. If you go back to the original quote from Nehemiah, he prayed. And when he prayed some of the words of the Bible back to God. So I want you to think about that with mom and dad. How are we supposed to pray And is it okay if we recite the Bible back to God? Nehemiah did this, and other writers in Scripture did it too. And I think it's an important thing for us to consider. So I want you to talk with mom and dad about those three questions, and I look forward to seeing you Sunday. I love you, and I'll see you soon. God bless.